Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the Rookery on Clapham Common, and look who's back in the building. Patrick Van Straten. We've got him out of his house. We've got him into a pub. How are you feeling?
I feel good. I came along with my wife and baby today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel great. It's kind of nice to be here and have a
say,
Coke.
mate, it's the most I've seen you smiling, honestly, in so long. I know you can wipe your smile off your face out there.
Yeah.
He was all saying hello to Patrick's new little baby, and he was very, very smiley. So I think it's lovely, mate. How are you, Dukes?
I'm good. I've had a slightly strange morning, actually. Grace told me I was sleep-talking in French last night.
Ooh.
I don't actually speak French, so
bad French,
GCSE
presumably.
French was just coming out. Bizarre.
It's like that woman who got hit on the head and woke up with the Chinese accent.
Or a Jamaican
and there was a
accent
woman with an
often
English
happens,
accent in like Texas or whatever, but then when she spoke in her English accent, it was a really bad Yank English accent.
No.
It's strange, right? Very strange.
Gone for the Juventus kit today as well.
Yeah,
Is
thought
that a
so.
legit one?
This is actually legit.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking of a PSG one, but the logo is so fake that the logo has melted in the wash. So I'm going to have to get a new PSG one.
It probably looks more real than half the kits coming out this season, though,
sure,
where they
the
all look like the
Puma
ones you
The Puma
bought.
one.
Like,
Oh my god, the lad from Fenerbahce last night. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah,
when he goes to
yeah.
kiss the
bag.
It reminds me of when you went on holiday to Turkey when you were a kid and you were
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'll buy the Brazil shirt. And it was all like flat. There was nothing embroidered onto it.
Oh my god, so painful. Right, let's move on because you guys have been sending in your questions all week, and loads of people want us to talk about the relegation scrap this week. So we thought we'd put a little bit of a spin on it because the transfer window is still open. We're going to talk about some of the relegation threatened sides and some of the business they've done, whether or not it's good enough to keep them in the league. I mean, on our preview show, on our predictions, I had Watford bottom. Did you have Watford bottom?
I did indeed.
Were you going to say Watford bottom because you weren't here for your predictions?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Whereas opening weekend, I think the new signings in particular were extremely impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the new signings, Ismail Assar as well, of
Yes.
course. Not a new signing, but playing up front alongside Emmanuel Dennis. They were full of running. They absolutely destroyed Aston Villa in that first half. I think a lot of people were expecting Aston Villa, to come out quite well with Buendia starting. Leon Bailey was, of course, on the bench, etc. But no, Watford played really, really well. And Emmanuel Dennis was a crucial part of that. Their new striker from Club Brugge they brought in for just over £3 million. Bit of a bargain potentially because he had a very good record at Bruges. I think it was consistently around 6-7 goals per season, but very good in the Champions League as well. I think he had got 4 goals in 14 Champions League games, which included a double against Real Madrid in the 2019-20 season. I remember that at the Bernabeu, and that's when Courtois then went off at half-time, or thought he was going to go off at half-time with stomach issues. Emmanuel Dennis sort of tore Real Madrid apart. So I was quite excited to see what he was going to do there. He went on loan to Cologne last season from Bruges, and didn't really do that well, so I think that's why he was available for a club like Watford. But really pacey, really full of running, like never really stops, great engine on him. It'll be interesting to see how much game time he gets when João Pedro's back, and Troy Deeney as well, when he's back to full fitness as well. Although you'd probably expect Troy Deeney to play much more of a bit part role this season than they did when they were last in the Premier League. But yeah, great start for Watford, and I thought Emmanuel Dennis has a potential to be one of the bargains of the season if he continues this sort of form.
That's such a big early claim, but I do agree with Watford. I think their whole game this season under Xisco is going to be reliant on quick transitions, counter-attacks, and that is where Ismail Assar thrives. And if he can get that partnership going with Dennis, because quite often when Ismail Assar was first in the Premier League, was it 2 seasons ago, those balls that he was whipping across the box after beating a man on transition, no offence to players like Troy Deeney, but weren't able to keep up with him in transition, whereas Emmanuel Dennis seemed to be able to. The 2 lads in centre mid as well, I think is it Kuka and Atebo, they look pretty solid as well.
Sadly, Kuka's just saw before we came on, he's been ruled out for 3 months.
Oh, that's a hammer
for
blow
an
as well,
injury he sustained in that game. Really gutting.
Really?
Because he
but
was
Cucho
starting so
Hernandez
well.
is not a new signing, but a new signing for Watford in the Premier League, and he came on and scored that great goal as well. I know, Pat, you've been a fan of him when he was at Huesca, I think, Cucho Hernandez.
Yeah, well, they did an
You've been
interesting.
hyping him for years.
Well, they've done an interesting job over the last few years. Do you remember we talked about him? We talked about Adalberto Peñaranda, who now I think is like in Russia or something.
Oh, no.
But like, yeah, they were doing this for a long time and like hoping that one of these guys would hit big, and João Pedro is one of those guys as well. It'd be nice if one of them finally worked out, because I think that idea of like quick transitions and like let's make the most out of our attack makes perfect sense when you look at that squad. Like, yes, okay, maybe it's sad that Kuka is injured, but on the other hand, like he's pretty old and you can't really rely on him for the whole season. Like, the strength in that squad is undeniably that front line. I know that Isaac's success is going off to Udinese, but I think that in that position you've basically got to kind of play the old like Paco Gemes like Rayo Vallecano way, which is like we're going to have to try and win games 4-3, and we're going to lose a lot of games, but maybe we'll win a lot of games because draws aren't going to keep us in the division. I'm not sure they're going to have the defensive solidity to play any other way.
They've also signed this guy from Nantes called Ibrahim Louza, who I don't know anything about except for what I saw.
He's a midfielder,
on
so
he's a midfielder, and he got a lot of goals last year. And the last time they were in the Premier League, Tom Cleverley and Will Hughes didn't really contribute that many goals, and it was a major problem. I mean, they haven't really had a goal scorer in midfield since Abdoulaye Doucouré left.
That Will Hughes problem behind the scenes with Kuka's injury might have to start shifting. So obviously he's been kind of demoted down to the under-23 side after a few like contractual issues and off-the-field problems. Then Palace came in with that £5 million bid that was rejected, and Palace said we're not going to pay a penny more than £5 million for a player that you don't want and doesn't want to play for you. So I think that Kuka injury is quite bad. But like Atebo, in the centre of the park, like I think he's close to 40 caps for Nigeria now. I think he's on loan from Stoke. He's on loan from Stoke with an option to buy. Like that feels like smart business, and that's the sort of business that Watford have conducted quite well this summer, because the prices of these players are extremely low. So there's massive upside, and I don't think any neutral anyway, realistically thought coming into the season Watford stand a good shot of staying in the league. I think they're, by the bookies' odds, quite comfortably the favourites to go back down to the Championship. So by spending these small fees, I think that they're extremely smart. If they do get a high upside off one of them, the likelihood is they can probably make a profit next season. So I like the business they've done. I still don't think it's good enough to keep them in the league. Yeah, I think Ismaila Sarr is going to have an incredible season for Watford. I think he's going to have to be closing in on that sort of 20-goal involvements, to be honest with you. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I think when he dropped down to the Championship, it almost doesn't suit his style of play as well in the Championship, where Watford are one of the highest talent levels in the division, and teams do have to sit a little bit deeper, and Ismaila Sarr is playing against low blocks. When Ismaila Sarr's at his best, I think back to that Liverpool game 2 seasons ago, where he was flying on the counter-attack, able to beat a man one-on-one. That's probably where he's going to play most of his football for Watford this season. We're not going to see Watford have 60% of the ball in the Premier League. It's just not going to happen. So that might suit Ismaila Sarr, but I think they still get relegated, despite the business. And that Kuka injury now that you just said, I think that is a big blow, because he was exceptional against Villa. Next side then, another side, quite a lot of the guys in the predictions said to go down. I wish I'd put them in there now. I would probably revise my predictions to swap Norwich for Brentford, because watching that first Norwich game, I know it was against Liverpool, but I thought they were a little bit lazy. I wasn't that impressed by them, and the summer business with the sale of Buendia, Pat, Rashik has got a lot of pressure on him. Cantwell's got a lot of pressure on him to step up and perform. I'm not sure.
I mean, there were parts of their game I was quite impressed by it. Like, I was looking at a chart of like the way that Liverpool force teams to complete passes at a lower rate than they do in their other games. And actually, Norwich completed passes at a higher rate against them than pretty much anyone did last season. And they got more shots off against them than I think pretty much anyone did in the league last season.
Wow.
Their combination play is still really impressive. Like, what Farke gets out of the players he has at his disposal, I think is quite interesting. But you're absolutely right. Like, they've gone from a team which had like an outstanding creator who everything went through, to a team which now has got to get a lot out of Rashica, or maybe even Christos Solis, who's the teenage Greek winger that they've signed very, very quickly, and that's a little bit troubling. But what I do like about Norwich is I think when you come up to the Premier League, you've kind of got two choices. You can either spend so much money that you're definitely going to stay up, or you can just continue to recruit in the way you always have and know that at the very least the club's going to be stable. And Norwich have their way of recruiting. These are players who can go back down with them and it's no problem at all, and they can carry on building and keep developing with the side. Like Rashica, I think he's still 23, 24 in that range, maybe a little bit older actually. And I know he had a bad season last year. I think it was 4 goals and an assist in the Bundesliga, but the couple of years before that, I think he got 13 both times, 13, 14. So I think he's someone who can definitely develop with them, and he's extremely fast. He offers some of what Buendia does. So do I think their business is going to keep them up? No. Do I think their business is stupid? Also no. I think that Norwich have their principles, they stick to them, kind of like Brentford. They're like, these are our principles, this is how we recruit, and they know that they'll probably come up, go down, come up, go down, come up, go down, until eventually they come up and they stay up. And I don't think that's going to be this year, but I don't have an issue with the way that they build their squad.
Yeah. Dukes, what do you think about Norwich's business?
Well, the business is a bit meh, I would say. For want of a better word. But
that was a noise.
Yeah, a noise. But what I was impressed with watching a part of their game last weekend before I switched over to Dortmund-Frankfurt, which was a hell of a game. So glad that's on Sky this year. Anyway, what I noticed was Todd Cantwell and Max Aarons just seem so much better at this level now. Todd Cantwell looks extremely confident and able to hold onto the ball in great spaces. He's playing really nice balls through to Pukki. And Max Aarons now looks like he can match people physically. Like he had a really good game against Sadio Mane.
And Tsimikas as well, who he was like clowning half the game.
Exactly. And I just remember when Max Aarons, when they first went up, I thought Max Aarons seemed a bit overhyped, to be honest, for the price point that he was being talked about, which was like £25 million.
He's very lightweight, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now, they just seem like more ready to contribute at this level. Obviously, a lot of it rests on Pukki, of course.
That is a problem, though. I think that's a major issue. Like, what was Pukki, 12 goals 2 seasons ago, or whenever they went back down?
Yeah, about 8 of them in the first month.
And I think he's entering the last year of his contract. If he doesn't, I can't go back in for Pukki, because I'm going to get hammered. But like Josh Sargent as well, that's come in from Werder Bremen. I think with Pukki not having Buendia's 2-3 chances being created for him every game, are we going to see the same Teemu Pukki we saw when he was last in the Premier League? I'm not so sure. And I also think that the loss of Ollie Skipp in that defensive midfield role is a sizable one. Like I think Billy Gilmour's probably got a higher ceiling than Ollie Skipp, and it certainly has a huge talent. But Ollie Skipp was extremely consistent for Norwich in that defensive midfield role. And when you take a player out of the team that's 30, 40 appearances in what was such a successful Norwich side, Billy Gilmour has to hit the ground running like that. Like, he has to be straight into it. It's not easy to do for a young player. So I like the business, but a little bit like Watford, I just don't think it's enough to keep him up. And I think that Buendia sale was a killer.
Yeah, I think that's a rough one. I mean, I always think that everybody coming up should just buy a DM, and I think they did get a DM, but I can't remember his name. They got a cheap one. But like, I think with the Pukki thing, it reminds me a little bit as well, like a couple of years ago we had that conversation about Vesely when he went to Aston Villa too, and everybody's attitude was kind of like, you're saying Pukki's terrible, you're saying Vesely is shit. And that wasn't really what we were saying. It was more the point that like, you have one striker, basically. You are in serious trouble if they don't hit or if they get injured. And Villa had to go out and get Mbwana Samatta halfway through that season and stayed up by the skin of their teeth. Norwich went down, despite the fact that everybody was crowing, about like, oh, well, Pukki's got over 10 goals. It didn't help them in the end. So, I don't know, it just seems like a very big gamble to not strengthen in that zone to any great degree.
And while Josh Sargent seems like a really promising player, I think Werder Bremen fans were really impressed with his development there. Never really like massive goal scoring numbers. I think it was 9 goals in his last 60 Bundesliga games across the last 2 years. What they were impressed with, Norwich fans on my Twitter timeline, was their new Greek left back called Giankoulis or Gianloulis. Need to get that nailed down for the next Sunday Live. So anyway, he had a really good game against Liverpool, so hopefully he can continue.
And opening day against Liverpool is like nightmare.
Yeah,
fixture,
exactly.
isn't it? They always pump Norwich. Like wherever Norwich are and however good Norwich are, they always get whacked by Liverpool. So I think that fixture was the same the last time Norwich got promoted, but it was at Anfield. And I remember Norwich scoring quite early, and we were like,
oh. They went up though, didn't they? Yeah.
And then suddenly they got absolutely hammered from there on in. But okay, let's move on to the next side. Brentford. Slightly, I feel like I've underrated Brentford this season. I actually feel like off the back of that first game, maybe I disrespected them in the preview. I don't think they've done huge amounts of business, but the business, as ever with Brentford, data-led, smart recruitment from the likes of Lee Dykes, who's their head of recruitment now. I think it looks okay. It honestly looks okay, and I think that 11 with Christophe Ayer slotting straight into that back line looked quite a natural Premier League side against Arsenal, I thought. It didn't seem like it was a promoted team.
I had concerns about them defensively in that game.
Oh, here we go.
I think they'll be fine, but actually when you look at Brentford last year, they were a really dominant defensive side in the Championship.
Yeah, they were.
I think on average, teams completed 2 passes inside the box against them a game. Against Arsenal, against a very inexperienced Arsenal side that was playing quite badly, they did give up 22 shots. And bearing in mind that last year, I'm not saying that Arsenal were particularly good in this game, but last year Arsenal, when they played badly, struggled to get shots at all. In this match, there were lots of times that Smith Rowe got free running through the middle, and I think that Thomas Frank will be delighted with the result and be like, look, this is great, well done, deserved result. But there are things we need to work on here, like Arsenal getting Kieran Tierney like free far too easily on the side. If Arsenal had had a real striker, maybe that's a concern, and certainly against better sides, it's a concern, right? So I think that those are things to be worked on. On the other hand, I think this team is built brilliantly to play on the counter.
Yeah.
Like they have always produced good forwards.
was so good.
He's so good, and I mean Tony is just like. Tony's passing is surprisingly good. I think there was one little ball he clipped in to the back stick where Mbeumo almost got onto it. And an interesting thing that I saw pointed out was with some of their signings. So they've signed Johan Vieira and they've signed Frank Onyeka.
Yeah.
And both of those guys are pretty press resistant. They can dribble a bit, but they also win lots and lots of fouls. And so it might be part of Brentford's plan this season as well. So like that's how we get up the pitch.
And we know they employ set piece coaches, don't they? They were one of the first teams to do that as well. But that Vieira lad you just mentioned there, I don't know if you guys saw the story about him and his like nearly collapsed move to Brentford. He basically opened his door at the last club he was at. I think he was in France. I think they got him out of France. And a woman was there with her kid, and she got him to sign an autograph, whatever. And went away, and then he woke up in the middle of the night and she'd broken into his house and she attacked him with acid and threw acid in his face, and it went into his eye. So he had to have eye reconstructive sort of surgery on his eye just before he moved to Brentford. So Brentford's medical team had to do like a real in-depth like eye kind of thing, like how's his eye, like what's going on there. Like
that is horrendous.
Honestly, it's crazy. Like some of the stuff. There's a really good article on The Athletic about him, but yeah, he's very highly thought of, like amongst the Brentford recruitment team, because Brentford's recruitment is so smart over the last few years. The sales have been so good that they've been able to reinvest really well, and I just back that recruitment team to get it right. Like if they think Onyeka and Vieira are the guys to go for, I'm backing them to get it right. I read another thing today about, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Brentford have got rid of their academy.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
So they don't have an academy at Brentford. What they've instead opted for is the Brentford B team, which is effectively, they go to Arsenal, they go to Chelsea, they go to Spain and France, Germany, and say, look, we don't have an academy, so what we would like to do is set up a partnership with you in that players that don't make it to your professional level and professional contract, we get first refusal on. So say Arsenal are letting a 17-year-old go, he hasn't signed a professional contract, Brentford will say, we'll take him, we'll give you 10,000 for him, and we'll insert a 25% sell-on clause. So Brentford are like, rather than having an academy, basically nicking everybody's academy players because it's cost effective for them to do that. And that money has enabled them to like do so many bits of business over the last few years. The likes of Onyeka and stuff, obviously not just because of the academy money, but also the sales. I just think that sort of stuff is so smart. Like, I think his name's Lee Dykes, who's the head of recruitment for Brentford and for FC Midtjylland. Like, he does a joint role across both teams. Okay. And I think these signings, like Onyeka, like Christophe Ayer, like Vieira, I think these are the ones to watch out for, because if they're backing it and they're signing these players, I reckon at least one of them will explode. Like Hamill has repeatedly said to us, Christophe Ayer is easily a Premier League level and could do it at a decent team. And I feel like Brentford got a bit of a bargain there.
Yeah.
What was it?
Something like 11 million, something like that.
Yeah. Like cheap.
Didn't seem like there was that much competition for him as well. But Vieira should be interesting actually. He had a bit of a journeyman career and then settled in Lorient and then played a like crucial role in them getting promoted the year before last. But last year was his first season of like full top flight season, and he's playing for Lorient, a side that only just escaped relegation. I think he got over 10 goals. He's very good in the air as well, so I'm intrigued to see how he gets on if he gets some minutes. Yeah, so that's the promoted teams out of the way. We're saying we think Brentford so far, recruitment-wise, probably the best to stay up.
Yeah, probably had the best talent level coming off as well.
Yeah, Brentford and Watford, I think.
Okay, Southampton then. Let's move on to
pressure.
Because this is the pressure. Honestly, big pressure. I've heard Hasenhüttl over and over again say in the last 2 weeks, this is the best squad I've had at Southampton. I feel like that's just so rude.
but isn't that maybe that's because we look at it as like as player quality as if it's absolute. So like this player is like, you know, they're a 95 on FIFA, so you know they're good. Whereas like for Hasenhüttl, it's going to be much more like, this is the best squad I have to play the way I want to play. And so like Adam Armstrong, you know, like has great intensity, is very quick, is obviously a great finisher. His finish against Everton,
Outrageous.
it's unnecessary.
So unnecessary.
Does it not remind you of that Suarez one against PSG years ago? Where I was like, why does he put it top corner? But he does.
He's a great
it's
finisher.
incredible. And so if he's going to score, and I think he probably thinks that maybe Che Adams can play that Danny Ings role, where he's a little bit more of a facilitator.
Che Adams is a good player.
You know, you look at the squad and you think, okay, I don't think there's a huge amount of like absolute talent here. But it does sort of look more like it's built to play Hasenhüttl football, maybe. So that would be interesting. I mean, I worry about losing Vestergaard, basically losing him for cost. You know, like you're not really making money on Vestergaard at 15 mil, but they got Salisu last summer, so maybe he starts playing a little bit more. You know, they've got Perrault, like he's going to come in at left back. They've got Livramento. You know, like they've made interesting signings, and it's perfectly possible that these guys work out. And even if we don't think that, like, you know, like Breuer coming out of like the Chelsea Academy is going to be like a Premier League level striker. He's at least a backup striker, which is kind of more than they've had historically.
Yeah, like what do you think of the Southampton recruitment?
I'm a little bit worried. I think the depth isn't great. I think we saw last year when Oriol Romeo was out for a bit, they really sort of struggled in midfield. Yeah. And him and Ward-Prowse is quite a nice combination, but I just don't think there's that much depth. I think Adam Armstrong's a nice pickup, but it's not a lot beyond that. I think only Ward-Prowse and Armstrong were the only players last year to create over one chance per game.
That's a big problem for them.
There's not much creativity, and Djenepo's never really worked out in terms of like real output. I think he's a great dribbler, but there's not that much.
Djenepo and Walcott feel like, I'm not going to say like black holes in the squad, but like they're just a body on the field. It feels like to me.
Isn't Djenepo still quite young?
I think so, but I'm not sure what he's offering other than sort of off the ball work. He is an alright dribbler, I think, but I'm unconvinced about his creative prowess, Walcott's creative prowess. Like I was looking at their expected goals last season, it was sort of similar to Newcastle and Fulham. Like creatively, Danny Ings didn't have a lot of support, and I'm sure Adam Armstrong, we know he's a great finisher, like easily one of the Championship's best finishers in terms of non-penalty expected goals, all those sort of stats. He's above and beyond, so he will finish it if he gets the chances. But who's creating the chances, I think, is a big issue, because they all seem to come from James Ward-Prowse's set pieces, and they just can't be reliant on that again, I don't think.
Why have they never done that? Why have they never just gone and taken a risk on like an actual creative midfielder? Like these guys are around, they can be had. Like get them out of you can get them out of the Championship now, and you can certainly like try and get some guys from say Ligue 1. Like there are these people around, and it's weird that, you know, they're just getting beaten at their own game. Yeah. They used to be the team that did the stuff that now we praise Brentford and Brighton for. And they've never quite recovered from when they had a huge turnover of talent, I think in the kind of Koeman period. Lost a load of guys from the backroom staff, and now they've never.
They've wasted a lot of players as well, or players just haven't worked out. Like I remember Sofiane Boufal was bought for like over £15 million. So I saw he left this summer for free to Angers.
They've had a lot of
Gabbiadini and that another striker as well.
Osvaldo.
And the other guy, there was like an Argentinian, Guido Carrillo, like he didn't work out.
There's been some
Ramirez.
real shockers.
And Redmond never
to
kicked on. There was a point, I think, where we thought Redmond was going to be a really interesting player, never kicked on.
Never kicked on. I think they also, I think they do still need a centre-back. Like Salisu, Bednarek, and there is one more guy, Jack Stevens. I think they're in the market for a centre-back. I saw them linked with Nat Phillips. I saw them linked with Takahiro Tomiyasu out of Bologna.
Has anyone picked up Ozan Kabak?
No, they're interested in Ozan Kabak as well, but I think they were reticent to pay the £18 million fee. So I think they're interested in centre-backs. Because there was also a bit of talk about Philip Billing, but I think he's on the verge of joining Norwich, actually, from Bournemouth.
Competent DM, I think.
So I think they are... Yeah, that's a bit of a problem area post-Vestergaard, because it could get quite one injury and you've only got two senior centre-backs in there. I think that's a problem area they need to fix. Should we go to another potentially relegation-threatened team? We get hammered every time we say it, but Newcastle, I think, are a relegation-threatened team. They're in my bottom three of my predictions.
Yeah, they're just outside mine.
And judging on the weekend's game against West Ham...
Great game.
Great game, but they need a centre-back.
It's fun, wasn't it?
They need a centre-back.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't. He obviously doesn't trust Fabian Schär to play in that ball-playing position. So I think they finished the game with Isaac Hayden at centre-back. Like it's got to be changed.
Yeah, I don't think that formation really suits a lot of their players as well. Like, why did they bring in Ryan Fraser for free? Like, you've got to either use Joe Linton or try and sell him and get some sort of fee. Like, why is he just wasting on the bench? And then the Longstaff brothers, like, what's happened to them? Such like
Well, about to leave, I think.
Yeah, they've just like not kicked on whatsoever at all, and they're just not getting the game time. I don't think. I mean, it looked like Sean Longstaff was linked with Man United at one stage.
50 million, I think.
For crazy fees, and he's just really struggled under Steve Bruce. But I've got to say, I did really enjoy that game last weekend. I thought Alan Saint-Maximin was electric as ever, but you just don't want him picking up the ball 50 yards from goal. Actually, sometimes in his own half in that game. And they got a bit unfortunate with that penalty, nearly knocked over the table. That penalty that Murphy gave.
I didn't think that was a pen.
It was a bit soft, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean, hopefully, if Wilson, I think they'll have enough to stay up, to be honest, with Wilson and Saint-Maximin. But it's a bit of a strange squad.
It is a bit of a strange, and the recruitment is obviously so like Newcastle fans are so angry about it. Like the Willock signing is good, young, talented, homegrown. Obviously, a huge upswing last season. What was it, 7 in 7 or 8 in 7?
Yeah,
or something
he's going
like
for
that
the record
back
this
end of the
weekend
season.
for Newcastle goals consecutively.
Yeah, and I don't want to bemoan it, but obviously he's not going to score at that rate, so he's not the saviour for Newcastle throughout the course of the season. And it comes back to like the defence. I just don't think is strong. It needs reinforcing. It really does. To still be playing Kieran Clark at centre back. Like no offence to Kieran Clark, but to still be playing Kieran Clark at centre back. Obviously Jamal Lascelles is still out injured, I think. They've just got to get a left-sided centre-back in through the door because Fabian Schär is just not going to be trusted. Paul Dummett's still injured. They went for Axel Tuanzebe, and I think he ended up going Villa for £5 million loan fee. I think they've gone for another centre-back as well. It escapes my mind, but maybe William Saliba it might have been. And he ended up going to France. But they need some defenders, I think, Newcastle. But yes, they're going to be in and around the mix for me, though. Pat, what are your thoughts on Newcastle?
I find it really hard not to put them in the bottom three. It's just they're so reliant on Callum Wilson and Alan Saint-Maximin, and I agree. Like I can see why they wanted Willock. And I'm glad he's gone there because I think that role at Newcastle last season suited him far better than any role Arsenal would have done. I think they'll get far more out of him. But putting all your eggs in the Willock basket when your squad's in that state concerns me. And my biggest issue with Newcastle is the same as my issue with the team I think we're going to come on to in a minute. I don't understand what the plan is. You know, like I don't see
Sell the club.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. But you know, because you do look at the team, right, and you're like, there's no path here for this to become like a really good side. Like, whereas at least with a team like Norwich or Brentford, you're like, well, if they get relegated, you can understand what their plan is. Like, where I get frustrated is when I look at these teams and I think, is this just like stay in the league this year, and then the plan next year is stay in the league this year, and it's the same every year? Like, that is so demoralising. At some point, you've got to try and be a little bit more ambitious than that. Even if it's just, we're going to play good football, we're going to finish 10th. Like, try and do something. I look at Newcastle and their squad.
The owner does cuck them for that, though, doesn't it? Like, the owner kills them for that.
Sure, but the squad does depress me. Yes, he does.
They spent a lot of money as well, to be fair. There's some big signings like Almiron, Joe Linton.
100%, but the recruitment has been like so mishmash. Like there is no, I agree, there's no plan, but the owner is just.
Yeah, it seemed like at one stage they were going for like Liga offcuts, and it was like young English talent. Now I just don't really know what it is, to be honest. But I do feel sorry for Newcastle fans, despite being a Sunderland fan myself, because their arbitration hearing about the Saudi Arabian takeover was supposed to be in July.
It's a year now.
It's been delayed to early 2022. Like shocking. No clearance on when that is. No clarity, I should say. And the club is just sort of meandering towards potentially another relegation battle, and they just deserve better than that.
In fairness, though, I don't really like the idea that people are like, oh my God, we need to get like this toxic owner, Mike Ashley, out of the club so that we can get in like the Saudi Arabian royal family or whoever. Like,
it's no, that is not desperate for that.
That is not a good situation for anybody. But like, it's just, I think that. Maybe just because of the era I grew up, like watching football, like I've always been fond of Newcastle because I think about, you know, the Shearer and Solano days or whatever, and they're a big club with a big stadium full of fans who genuinely like really care, and it just frustrates me that I feel like Newcastle don't really care and haven't really done anything to improve their team for a long time.
Yeah, was the team that you are going to compare him to Burnley, by the way, who we're going to move on to next?
Yes.
I mean...
What are they doing? Like,
they're shooting their shot, man. They went for Maxwell Cornet from Lyon. Like, how is that ever going to come off? Why would he swap Lyon for Burnley?
Honestly.
But yeah, no business pretty much.
Again.
Except for Nathan Collins coming in from Stoke. But yeah, they're going for...
Who was it last year? Jack Stevens? was it?
Yeah, very quiet again last summer. I just feel really sorry for Sean Dyche, to be honest. That team is getting very old. You were telling me before we shot, like the contract situation's really bad.
The contract situation's a disaster.
Is
at
everyone
Burnley?
gonna leave?
They obviously the average age of the squad at Burnley, I think, is
now the oldest in the league.
30.8. It's the oldest in the league by about 2 years. I think Crystal Palace managed to bring theirs down considerably by letting everybody
Yeah, they've
go.
gone to like 27 from 29.
Yeah,
or something.
and Burnley's obviously year on year has got older and older. Their squad, I think there's 5 or 6 senior players, I can't remember to my mind, that have a contract past 2023. Tarkowski and me are out of contract next summer. I don't see either of them signing, particularly James Tarkowski. There's no way he stays at Burnley. He'll be off to a top 8 club, I'd imagine, James Tarkowski on a free. Nick Pope's out of contract 2023. Chris Wood's out of contract 2023. Like
Dwight McNeil might leave this window.
Dwight McNeil's still up in the air. I think ALK Capital is the sort of investment firm that bought Burnley fairly recently, actually, and they obviously took out a lot of loans against this Burnley side. And it is imperative for that side that they stay in the Premier League. Seriously, it is imperative because it's so old. The contract situation means they're not going to be able to sell anyone. They've got so many loans out against this takeover. I think Burnley is a worry for me at the moment. Like, they have got some exciting players, like you talked about Dwight McNeil. I think Tarkowski's still a fantastic player. Brownhill seems to have had a bit of an impact since he's come into the team, but the business is non-existent. They don't sign anyone ever.
No.
It's just Nathan Collins, Jack Stevens last summer. What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean they're clearly targeting like a dynamic left back, because I think they're also linked with Marc Cucurella as well, who obviously came through at Barcelona and has been at Elche or Getafe maybe. Anyway, he's a really good running threat, like really dynamic. He's a kind of like Junior Firpo from a few years ago in terms of having a lot of freedom on the left. He'd be a great signing, but I just can't really see him going to Burnley right now. It's difficult to attract players to Burnley. It's a tiny town, no disrespect to them, in the middle of Lancashire. It's difficult to get these Maxwell Cornets and Cucurellas to come up there, but they're just not trying hard enough, I don't think.
Yeah, and also I feel like their recruitment has been poor. Like, it's been poor going back 5 or 6 years now. I think of their last 16 major recruits, only 4 are still at the club, and that's like Matej Vieira, who is he's a player. Like he's a body on the field.
He's a number.
He's a body on the field. Like Brownhill's there. Obviously Jay Rodriguez has had his injury problems, not been great. Like Eric Peters is there. Has been actually okay for them, fairly consistent. But some of the other names you think that have gone there and like failed, the likes of like Stevens being picked up from, was it Brighton released for free? Like, I just don't understand the idea at Burnley. When Tarkowski and me leave next summer for free, that is just that could be like, if they also get relegated in the same summer, those two go for free, and Nick Pope ends his final year of his contract, that squad is going to be really stuck in the mud in the Championship. Like, it's not going to be a squad that it just drops down. Everybody's on good contracts, young, can come back up. They're all going to be 38 at that stage. So I worry for Burnley. I worry for him, in the words of Paul Merson, to be honest with you, because the squad's actually smaller than last season as well. They've let more players go than they've signed. So thinnest squad in the league, thinner. Brighton, let's talk about them, because you loved them last season. We all loved them.
I think they'll be all right.
Expected Brighton.
I think they'll be fine. Like, I really don't think Brighton will have any issue at all. Like, I think Brighton have gone out and they've got like a real ball-winning central midfielder, in Mwepu, who I think will be like really good for them. He got subbed off the other day. I think he was kind of in a bit of the wrong role for him.
Yeah. Slightly more advanced, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it just wasn't working at all. So I think they've got to reconsider that and find the balance with Basuma and Gross and all those kind of other guys they have. But I think they've got a really good squad. I think they've got They've got plenty of attacking quality. It looks like they're targeting a striker. Obviously, they went for Nicolas Gonzalez. He went to Fiorentina.
Yeah.
Now they're linked with Darwin Nunez from Benfica. I think he'd be an interesting signing for them. That it would be kind of funny for them to go and get a striker who has historically got more assists than goals. That would be quite a funny move for a team that apparently can't finish. But they will always dominate the ball. They'll always have a decent defence, and they'll always create chances. And I feel kind of pretty good about them. I don't think Brighton are in any serious danger, especially when I look at those sides around them. Yeah. I think this is a season where I'd be like completely happy to be like, there are 5 teams in the league worse than us.
Yeah. Absolutely, and with the like settled manager as well, you'd expect like Crystal Palace might be a bit up and down, Wolves too as well. Like Brighton could push for like a 10th finish.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, and they've got Tarek Lamptey to come back as well. They're expecting big things. I was reading an Athletic article about Alexis McAllister this season, finally trying to get some consistency. I think he struggled with the pace of the league at times since he's arrived from Argentinos Juniors, and then I think he went to Boca Juniors as well. But they let him go to the Olympics, and apparently that's really improved his mood because the Olympics is obviously so big for South American players. So, and he started with a goal the weekend against Burnley. So.
Yeah, they got Moises Caicedo as well, a full season of him. Obviously, massively highly rated when he was coming out of Colombia. I think they picked him up in January, and he had injury problems. And from what I saw of the game on the weekend, Potter's mixing it up again. He is like, he's not afraid to do it, is he? Obviously, we saw them consistently play with that back three last year, with Ben White on that right-hand side of the centre-back three, and it was effective, defensively effective. I think by expected goals against, they're the third best defence in the league.
Yeah.
Obviously, they shipped a lot more than that. Robert Sanchez, I think he's a really good goalkeeper as well. And on the weekend, he went to a back four. And we saw Shane Duffy come back into the fold from Celtic. So I do think they maybe are a little bit thin at centre-back. Shane Duffy coming back in from Celtic, he had an absolutely honking season up in Scotland. It was so bad for him up there. And I think what the plan might end up being is Joel Veltman actually plays as one of the centre-backs that he's out at the moment. I don't know whether he's got COVID. And Pascal Gross was at left-back. Like, started at left-back on the weekend, which is just nuts. And then in the second half, another thing I thought was quite interesting in this new sort of shape he's developing, where I still think he needs a centre-back. But when Mwepu came off, and like Alzate was in there, like Robert Sanchez, when they were in possession, was like playing as a centre-back in the defensive line. It was like so bizarre. I haven't seen it in a long time, like Bayern Neuer sort of vibes. But the recruitment's fine. Like it's been fine and doesn't need to be anything exceptional. They haven't lost any major assets. They managed to keep hold of Yves Bissouma, which I think is a big dub for them because loads of top clubs want it with Yves Bissouma. And if they can get that midfield work in of Mwepu and Bissouma and Alzate and Moises Caicedo rotating in and out, as long as somebody can put the ball in the net, I think they will be in around the 10th spot.
Bissouma's a major player to keep hold of as well. I think he's Champions League level, genuinely. I think he is a really, really good midfielder. So to keep hold of him is great. And as you say, like the only major assets they've lost is Ben White, but that they do have some depth at centre back, and Dan Burns out injured at the moment as well. Hopefully he'll come back, and Veltman's a good player. So.
And they really did extract like the maximum value for
great
Ben
price
White.
for
Like I mean,
100%.
they got everything they could for Ben White, and I think that's like you say, like I think they've got the players in the squad to deal with it, but you just know they'll reinvest intelligently. Like the thing they've really got to do is keep hold of Potter. You know,
that is it.
If I were Brighton, I would be looking at teams like when Spurs were looking for a manager this summer, or I was just like, oh god, what if Arteta crashes and burns at Arsenal? I'd be really scared because I think, you know what, we've actually got like the best manager. We've got like the best English manager.
Yeah. It's so weird that he's not. Like, I don't know why more people aren't talking about him because he's so good.
And they play attractive football as well. Like it's not that they're boring.
I think part of it is he's got about 4 years left on his deal. Do you remember when they signed him? He had like a month at Brighton, and then they gave him a 6-year deal. And I remember putting on Twitter like 6-year deal. Did no one learn from Pardew? Like classic Dougie shooting himself in the head. Anyway, it's turned out to be a masterstroke. So they'll get a good compensation fee if he does it.
All right, I think that's enough relegation chat for now.
It's actually depressing me.
Yeah, it's quite depressing. Let's do a few quick fire questions then. Armchair Fan says on Twitter, who will have the best defence this season? Who do we think? Because it's
boring,
I think it might be Chelsea.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be hard to slip past Chelsea.
I forgot Chelsea existed for a moment.
Yeah, just that Tuchel defence is just so solid, isn't it? I think was it at Stamford Bridge they conceded like 1 goal in the Premier League after his arrival.
They've got a very solid base screening in front of them in Jorginho and Kante, Kovacic and Kante, whoever they want to do in there as well. I think probably Chelsea.
Yeah, Reece James is a very solid defender. Like, I will go Chelsea as well. Like City inevitably do have an extremely good defence because you just can't get a ball off them. But Chelsea this year for me.
Liverpool's will improve again.
But also, like Man City, before they get their England stars back and their players that have been at the Euros, etc., like they did look quite open to counter-attacks last weekend against Spurs. And I can see them having quite a rough first month or so.
Yeah, and Palace got shat on by Chelsea. Chelsea they couldn't get out of their half, could they, Palace? So it could be a long season if you're playing against Chelsea. The next one here from Blaine, 17, says, has the opening round changed your opinion on any prediction?
Well, I said Leeds for 6th, which now looks quite stupid.
But you did, I remember,
But against Man United in that sort of system, like it's very difficult. Like Man United just have incredible talent going forward, and Leeds leave a lot of space. And like Bruno, Pogba, Mason Greenwood were all like absolutely on fire in that game. I'm still quite confident that Leeds could finish above Spurs and Arsenal, depending on whether Spurs lose Harry Kane. Spurs obviously had a bit of a setback last night, losing to Pacos de Ferreira in the Conference League, but that was very much like their B team, so I wouldn't take too much from that. But I think Leeds could have a good season, but I think I might have overdone it with 6th.
Yeah. Fair.
I don't think my mind's been changed about anybody. Like from the first round of fixtures, like I thought everyone, like the games went roughly as I expected.
Were you shouting at your TV on Friday night during the Arsenal game?
I was a bit, but I was also a bit like afterwards. I thought that wasn't like everyone was talking like we've been absolutely battered, and I thought it was like a fairly even game where we just made unbelievably stupid mistakes. But I also thought the second goal shouldn't have stood. Like I mean, like, but it's a rod made for your own back, like that incompetence. But I was also like, I think Arsenal will finish somewhere between 5th and 8th.
Yeah.
I still think that after this match. In fact, I still would be confident about 5th or 6th rather than 7th or 8th.
Odegaard's arriving's massive.
I was getting panned for that, by the way. I was getting panned on
that.
Twitter for saying Arsenal are for 5th.
But that's just because like our fans, like everybody's like a catastrophizer. Like everybody's just like, oh my god,
it's so high and so low.
This has happened. Like, what are they going to do? Well, I think Brentford will turn out to be a bit better than people think, and I think Arsenal will turn out to be a bit better than people think if they think that they're going to be like 10th. But I don't know really. Like maybe Brentford are a little bit better than I expected. I maybe have a slight concern about Villa.
Okay.
I like their recruitment, though I think they massively overspent on Danny Ings, but it's fine. But they played Ashley Young on the wing in
What was
that
that about?
first
Over
game.
Bertrand Traore?
Yeah, and that concerned me. I thought I wasn't quite sure why the Ashley Young thing happened. I wouldn't really want to play him as a right back or as a winger in the Prem, and so unless you're planning a back three, I don't know why you'd sign him. But I thought, look, obviously Bailey's going to be fit, it's going to be fine. But in that match, I thought without Watkins, without Bailey, there's so much pressure on Emi Buendia to basically just be Jack Grealish, and he's not going to do that. He's not going to be last season's Jack Grealish. It's not possible. So I that concerned me for a moment. I thought
Tyrone Mings as well looked
Matt Target had a horrible game as
I
well.
thought there was way too much distance between Mings and Konsa at times, and we haven't been Mings' biggest fan on Football Daily at times, have we? Like, we prefer Esri Konsa, and I think that he needs to improve rapidly, Tyrone Mings, because he can't afford to drop dead performances in that Villa backline. While we're talking then on quickfire questions, we may as well, I'm just going to make this one up, but thoughts on the Ramsdale and the Odegaard signing? They'll probably, Odegaard's been confirmed, Ramsdale probably will be Bunner.
Odegaard, great, really good price. Sorry, I should say Odegaard. Really, really, really good player. Like, I thought his loan was better than a lot of Arsenal fans seem to think. I was more at the positive end. He had an injury when he came in, hadn't played much over the first half of the season. But more importantly, he's 22 and he's exactly in a position of need for Arsenal. Like, he's dead in it. And we know he can play with Smith Rowe. And I think if you'd had, say, him or Saka from the start in that Brentford game, someone for Smith Rowe to pass to who's competent, then I think, I'm not saying it would have been a better result, but it would have been a better performance. So I think that's great and slightly softens the pill of the Ramsdale fee, which is high. Again, I don't have a particular issue with Ramsdale as a player. People were talking I saw somebody say one of the worst keepers ever to set foot in the Premier League, and I was like, he was 23 last season, and he was playing behind a terrible defence, and actually didn't really cost the defence extra goals if you look at the numbers.
He won their Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year.
Yeah, he's done that the last couple of seasons, and I was just kind of like, what I don't know about him is whether he's good with his feet. I literally have no idea. Does anyone know? Like, Arsenal presumably do if they're going to pay this fee, but I don't have a particular issue with it. I think it's an overpay. I probably personally wouldn't have done it, because also I don't really quite get why Arsenal are shitting themselves about homegrown, given that they've got loads of young English players. But it is expensive.
I think it's made to look worse with the Martinez deal, first and foremost. Like, the Martinez deal gets brought up every time you speak about an Arsenal goalkeeping situation. Oh, you sold him for 20, now you're having to buy him for 30. Like, forget that. That deal's done. It's in the past. Like, you can't change that. It was probably an error. But I just think it's weird timing. Like, I understand Leno doesn't want to be at the club long term. Obviously, he hasn't signed that contract. He probably is going to leave. But it doesn't feel like that's going to happen this summer. Like, he's not going to leave this summer. And I understand that Renarsson's not good enough to be second choice. But, Alphonse Areola was available on loan.
Or Onana.
Onana has that move to Lyon fell through. So I think the funds probably could have been spent better, £30 million at right back for me, than £30 million
on a striker.
Centre mid.
Striker. Like, I just think that is a bit of a bizarre decision. You could have got Ramsdale next summer if you really needed to, and then just covered that with a goalkeeping loan, a bit like Spurs have done with Galini, where they brought him in on loan, haven't they? So yeah, weird one, but I think he'll be fine. Like,
I think the talent's there. Like I watched a lot of like England YouTube during the Euros because I was just loving England at that particular moment. And Ramsdale in like training was phenomenal from what I could see. And like he's clearly very talented. Yeah, he had some up and down games over the last couple of years at Bournemouth and Sheffield United. But I agree with you. It's just the weird allocation of funds this summer. But maybe they just accepted we're not going to be able to get the right back we need in. We're not going to get the striker in, so we might as well get a good backup goalkeeper when Leno inevitably leaves.
They just can't shift those people. Like I think Arsenal would have loved to have gone and got a striker this summer. I think they'd love to have got a right back, but they've got 4 right backs. They've got a couple of strikers because of their bad contract decisions in the past, their stupidity. Like they're stuck in a position where they can't strengthen. But now at least you kind of think, okay, right, well maybe next summer Arsenal know they need to get a CM, a right back, and they need to really, really spend a lot on getting a game-changing attacking signing. Yeah. And if you know those things, that's kind of okay. But I don't know. You look at this team, and I at least think, okay. Before I was wondering if in 2 or 3 years this side was going to be better. Now I look at 3 years from now, and I think I can actually see the core of a pretty good side. So that's better than it's been in the past.
We were calling it 3 years, weren't we? Just like buy younger players, try and build a side that is going to develop together to get back into the top 4, rather than by like it just seemed like a bit of a mismatched policy.
It's a shift, isn't it? It's a shift. It's definitely a shift in policy. And if you want to see more on Arsenal's contractual situation, FD Explains came out yesterday, didn't it, about Arsenal's nightmares in the business world over the last few years. Right, let's do one very quick personal question. I think we've done this before maybe, but from Sesky Time says, if you were a manager, what would your touchline attire be?
I think I'd mix up smart and casual.
You'd be wearing the team shirt, Dukes. That's not what I'm about.
I think I'd still have the Sambas on, but maybe Sambas with like quite smart trousers. Kind of like a Pep Hasenhüttl combo.
Nagelsmann, that is, mate.
No, Nagelsmann's got terrible clothes, I think.
He's the worst dressed man in football.
Yeah.
In a strong field.
I mean, I'm not a particularly good dresser myself, but I just don't want to go down the Nagelsmann route. And none of the knitwear that Pep wears either, but sort of a smart, casual look.
That's a bit Mikel Arteta-y, I think.
Yeah.
Mikel Arteta.
He's a good looking guy, I'll take it.
You suiting up?
Yeah, no, I think I'd probably do like the smart casual thing as well. Or maybe even, sometimes when I was just like pissed off, I'd be like tracksuit. Tonight
I would go tracksuit.
Full tracksuit. Because you're just like, when they're wearing a suit, I'm like, it's not a formal occasion, it's a football match. And also what I don't like is that managers insist on not carrying umbrellas when it's pissing it down. It's like, oh no, I won't look like a real man. Like if I don't get rained on, you're wearing a suit, you're just standing in the rain. Like it's not good for you. I mean, people used to die of that in the 19th century. Just like carry an umbrella. Like you're not proving anything by not having an umbrella.
I think Steve McLaren ruined umbrellas. For
managers. I know, but everyone was just like, everyone was like, oh, he's such a pussy because he doesn't like the rain.
You can't use it. It's too much for me.
It's done.
I'll go Steve. I would be full Steve Bruce, like full tracksuit.
Did you see his new top last week?
Yeah,
was it tracksuit?
It's really smart.
Was it?
I mean, I can't buy it because of Newcastle, but it's nice.
Yeah, I'd probably go like Hasenhüttl. He wears a lot of tracksuits, doesn't he?
You should wear the kit of whichever team your team is playing. So they just keep passing to you on the sideline.
I think the fourth official would have a problem with that. I think he would have a bit of an issue with that. All right, that's it for this week's Sunday Vibes. Before we go though, we are starting a new thing. If you leave a comment on our videos throughout the week, our listicles and our transfer talks, we'd like to give you a shout out at the end of the week. So shout out to the YouTube channel Football Drawn. Firstly, he says, I still remember when Ødegaard and Halilovic went to Real and Barca superstar teenagers. Glad at least one of them's had a respectable career. Well, I mean,
we'll see about that.
We'll see about that when he moves to Arsenal. And CFC Moi 11 says, Arsenal have never been the same since Thierry Henry left the club. That was a long time ago, mate. Get over it. Do you know what I mean? That got 105 likes. Football Drawings had 234 likes. So if you want to be featured at the end of Sunday Vibes next week, leave a comment on either a top 10 or a transfer talk to get involved. Lads, anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, why don't you go check out Friday's Continental Club? We actually had a special guest on. We had Jack Collins on from the Ranks FC podcast, talking about the Spanish season, sort of the preview, etc. I'm kind of butchering this. Anyway, he's very good, so go check it out.
Pat?
Yeah, the FD Explained you were talking about why Arsenal are so bad in the transfer window. I can't remember how we exactly termed it in the end, but it's basically a little dive into what Arsenal have been getting wrong over the last few years. So a way for me and George Wright, who edited it, to get our demons out.
Yeah, I watched it through. It's brutal. It's brutal, yeah. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye.